I shared a bed with a dragon alien. Now I'm bound as her eternal partner. The mining colony of Xerath, for was never meant to be comfortable. It was a frontier world, wind-scoured deserts, volcanic mountains belching ash into the skies, and a sky always painted the color of rust. Yet for Kale Reiner, a human engineer posted here by the Galactic Council, Xerath, for was home. Or, at least, it was supposed to be. He hadn't expected the dragons. The locals whispered about them, towering, scaled beings who lived in the volcanic highlands, half legend and half nightmare. The council called them the Dracarii, a reclusive alien species with wings like folded storms and eyes that burned brighter than plasma. The council had declared them non-hostile but unpredictable. To Kale, they were just another thing to avoid while patching up mining rigs in the blistering sun. Until the night, everything changed. Beginning the encounter. Kale's rover had broken down 50 kilometers from the colony, deep in a canyon where molten rivers cut through jagged stone. A storm rolled in fast, the kind that shredded human shelters to ribbons. His comms were dead. He had maybe an hour before the ash-laden winds would bury him. Then he saw her. She was massive, easily 3 meters tall, even crouched, with obsidian scales that glowed faintly red where the magma light hit. Her wings folded against her back, like the sails of a warship. But what struck him most were her eyes, golden, piercing, intelligent. Kale froze. Every instinct screamed run. But there was nowhere to go. The dragon alien tilted her head. She didn't roar or strike. Instead, she extended a clawed hand, beckoning him toward a cavern hidden behind a rockfall. Kale hesitated only a second before following. Inside, the cavern was warm. No, hot, but in a strangely comforting way. Glowing crystal veins ran along the walls, radiating heat that cut through the storm's chill. The dragon alien lowered herself onto a massive stone slab, clearly a resting place. She gestured to the other side. Kale blinked. "You want me to sleep?" She let out a low rumble, like distant thunder. Her meaning was clear. Either he accepted or he would freeze outside. Reluctantly, Kale lay down, keeping as much distance as possible. But as the storm howled outside, her body radiated a deep, steady warmth. Against his will, he drifted into the first peaceful sleep he'd had in months. When he woke, her wing was draped over him like a living blanket. Middle, bound by tradition. Kale returned to the colony the next day, shaken but alive. He told no one of the encounter, who would believe him. But the Dracarii woman was not finished with him. She came again. At first, she watched from the cliffs as he repaired mining towers. Then she left offerings, crystals, molten forged metals, even the carcass of a predator that had stalked him. And then one night, she returned to his shelter. Kale stammered as her massive form ducked inside, her golden eyes locked onto his. "Look, I appreciate the help, but..." She silenced him with a low growl and tapped her chest. Xerath. Her name. Kale swallowed. Kale. The bond began there. A word shared, then another. He learned her language slowly, through gestures, drawings, and patient repetition. The Dracarii tongue was harsh, full of rumbling growls and sibilant hisses, but he managed. And then came the revelation. One evening, as the firelight danced across her scales, Xerath told him, in halting words he barely understood, that to the Dracarii, sharing a resting place was sacred. To sleep beside one of their kind, to let another beneath their wings, was the ultimate declaration of trust. Worse, or perhaps better, it was binding. Xerath considered him her mate. For life. Kale nearly choked. "Wait, you mean that one night, when I slept in your cavern?" Her golden eyes glowed. She touched her forehead to his, a gesture of finality. Mine. Kale laughed nervously. This has to be a misunderstanding. I'm human, you're, 3 meters of scales and fire. But Sereth only rumbled in contentment. To her, there was no misunderstanding. The bond was made. Conflict between two worlds. News of Kale's bond spread faster than he expected. Somehow, the Dracarii knew. Whenever he walked the canyons now, other dragons watched him with wary respect or outright challenge. The humans at the colony, on the other hand, looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You're telling me you sleep with a dragon? His commander scoffed. She's not just a dragon, Kale muttered. She's Sereth. The council wasn't amused. The Dracarii were supposed to remain uncontacted, their culture untouched. Kale had broken every protocol by accepting her bond, even unknowingly. The council threatened to send him back to Earth for reassignment. But Kale couldn't. Every night, Sereth came to him. She spoke of her people, her mountains, her sky. She taught him that the Dracarii saw humans as fragile, yes, but also as fire that refused to die, even in storms. She told him that his laughter, his stubborn repairs in the ash storms, had drawn her to him before they ever shared that cavern. And somewhere along the way, Kale stopped laughing at the absurdity. He began to look forward to her warmth, her strength, her presence. Maybe he didn't mind being hers. Climax, the trial. But bonds in Dracarii culture were not simply declared. They had to be defended. One night, as Kale and Sereth rested near the molten cliffs, a shadow fell across them. Another Dracarii male, larger, wings spread wide, landed with a roar that shook the stones. Sereth rose, scales bristling. She hissed a single word, challenge. Kale's stomach dropped. The male wanted to claim her. By tradition, Kale would have to prove himself. Against a dragon. The fight wasn't fair. It wasn't meant to be. The challenger lunged, claws the size of Kale's torso. Kale barely dodged, stumbling across the rocks. He had no weapons but his toolkit. No claws. No wings. But he had his mind. And his bond. As the Dracarii male struck again, Kale dove, pulling a plasma cutter from his belt. He seared the dragon's wing joint, just enough to stagger it. He ducked beneath another blow, hurling a flash charge that detonated bright as a star. The beast roared, blinded. And in that moment, Sereth struck. She didn't kill, but her tail smashed the challenger into the rocks, leaving him broken and defeated. When the dust settled, Sereth loomed over Kale, golden eyes fierce. She lowered her head, pressing her forehead against his.
Mine.
Chosen. Eternal. Kale's hand shook, but he managed a grin. Guess I passed the test. Her rumble of approval shook the mountains. Ending. Eternal partners. The council tried to intervene, of course. They called his bond dangerous, reckless, unacceptable. But the Dracarii stood firm. In their culture, a bond was beyond politics, beyond law. And so Kale stayed. Not as an engineer of Zereth, but as the first human ever bonded to a Dracarii mate. He and Sereth carved out a life together in the volcanic highlands, half in her world, half in his. The humans learned to treat with the Dracarii, guided by Kale's strange, impossible partnership. The dragons who once scoffed at him now bowed their heads when he passed. At night, beneath wings like living shields, Kale would rest with Sereth, her warmth enveloping him, her heartbeat steady as the world outside raged. And though he'd never intended it, Kale realized something profound. He wasn't trapped by her bond.
He was freed by it.